All right, guys, here we go. So, we're gonna start laying nice and flat on our back. And we're gonna work into our pelvic tilts to begin with. So arms are reaching nice and long. And on that exhale, we're gonna tilt the hips back, imprint the low back against the mat, and then slow to articulate back towards the tailbone, back to neutral. Really keeping the ribs connected in and down. So as we're shifting the hips, we're not allowing the shoulders to slide out of position. We're controlling that movement and maintaining it and kind of corralling it from the bottom of the rib cage down towards the pubic bone and tailbone. So I have my shoulder blades connected flat to the mat, but more of my rotator cuff here, the deltoid muscles, they are not touching the mat. And I know I go over this a lot, but it's so important because if I think about shoulders down and back, a lot of times I end up here in this position because my shoulders are down and back flat against the mat versus down and back against my body, against my rib cage. And I'm maintaining those muscle connections in the upper abdominals. Warming up the back just a little bit more. We're gonna add some arm movements now. We're gonna take the arms overhead as we tilt the hips back, still maintaining that connection at the mid-ribs, the base of the shoulder blades, to tilt back and reach arms up overhead. And take it nice and slow for the first few. If your shoulders are tight, if your upper back is tight, we're going to do 2 more. Feel the glide of the shoulder blades and the shoulders. The shoulders will lift up towards the neck and the ears as the arms glide overhead to achieve and establish more of that upper position of the arm. But as they start to begin to come back down by the hip, they need to reset down the back of the rib cage so they don't stay stuck up by our ears and our neck. Coming back to a neutral spine position, arms are going to be down at our side. And we're going to bring our right knee to tabletop, extend that right leg straight up towards the ceiling, and I'm going to draw a little circle with my foot. Ankles in plantar flexion, I'm pointing the toes, and I'm drawing this teeny tiny little circle because I want to keep the pelvis and my low back nice and stable, as if I had a little saucer of water resting between my hip bones. I don't want to spill that saucer of water resting here just between the top hip bones around my belly button. I'm drawn in, and then I change that circle direction. Small little circles to start. You could make them a little bit bigger, but again, you want to make sure that the leg is circling and rotating in the hip itself. Two more little circles. And we'll bend that knee. Place the foot flat to the mat, just in line with the sit bone. And left leg will come to tabletop and extend straight up towards the ceiling. And once again, we're going for those small little circles. Pick any direction you want to start with. The right leg is stable, so oftentimes we're circling, we're moving one leg, and the opposite side is shifting, almost as a counterweight. So we want to push into that right foot a little bit, connect the back of that right leg into the abdominals, so we've got that stability. And then we'll change directions. Last two little circles. And we'll bend the knee, place the foot flat. Check your alignment just to make sure that your heels are in line with your sit bone, hips are in line with your ribs and your shoulders, and you're not shifted off to one side on the mat. Bringing the arms right up over the chest. We'll start here so we can keep the back flat against the mat, especially the upper back, and we're going to move into our chest lifts, this pre-hundreds prep position. Palms are facing towards the knees. We exhale, arms lower. We lift the head, neck, and chest. And inhale to reset. Keeping that pressure, slight pressure in the feet, in the back of the legs to keep the hips locked into position. We want to make sure that as we reset back to the mat, the hip now is not tipping forwards and backwards. So with that pelvic curl, to start off with, we were focusing on keeping the upper half of the body stable and not moving while we articulated the lower half. We're flip-flopping that now and making sure that we create that stability in the lumbar spine, in the pelvis, and allow for that flexion at the mid-ribs. We're going to take the arms farther up overhead now, still keeping the ribs knitted in, that mid-back connected to the floor and the mat, and then fold and lift. Now, if you begin to bring your arms back overhead and the back arches, the ribs flare, come back to that start position. Your lats, your mid-back, maybe just a little bit too tight to bring those arms overhead. Once those ribs flare and that mid-back arches, we lose that connection in the upper segments of abdominal muscles, and then it's hard to get into that chest lift because the muscles in our back are so tight. It's pulling our shoulder and our head back to the mat, so we get a lot more neck strain. We need that fold at the mid-ribs, that lift at the chest to really maintain that abdominal connection, take it out of the mid-back, and build that tension in the core more through the abdominals. We'll bring our arms out to a T position. We'll tilt the hips back a little bit. Let the arms drop for the floor. Start to bring the arms up overhead and back to that T position. Flattening as much of the spine, connecting as much of your spine to your mat as you can while the arms floss from T up overhead to Y. Two more passes, trying to draw the rib cage in a little bit deeper, flatten the back against the floor a little bit more with each pass of the arms. And then we'll come back to that neutral low back position. Palms come up right over the chest, facing the knees, and we'll bring our legs to tabletop position. You could add a pillow or a block between the knees, or bring the knees and the legs together. On the exhale, we lower the arms, fold and lift the head, neck, and chest, and slow to reset. Pressing into the inner thigh, connecting at the ankle. making sure the legs are stacked nicely right over the hip. And now we're going to take the arms back a little farther if you can do that and accomplish that without, again, the flare of the ribs or the arch of the back. Folding deeper at the midribs each time without taking that fold down into the low back. We're maintaining that little gap between the low back and the mat. And last one. Bringing those arms out to that T position, still maintaining your tabletop unless you'd like to rest for a moment. We're moving into our spine twist supine. And we're going to inhale, take the legs over to the right, connect that left shoulder down against the mat, and then exhale back to center. Only take the legs, the hip, and the low back to one side as long as you can keep the shoulder blade flat against the mat and the ribs and the abdominals connected, knitting in together, drawing to the spine, cinching up that corset just a little bit tighter. We're twisting through the mid-ribs, just there at the base of the pecs and the base of the shoulder blades. Coming back to center, bring our arms up over the chest, palms face each other. We're going to fold and lift the head, neck, and chest, keeping those arms reaching for the ceiling. We're going to rotate the opposite direction of the legs with the upper body. We inhale, legs go right, arms and chest rotate left, and exhale back to center. Inhale to twist to the opposite side, and back to center. Little tuck of the chin to the chest to take that strain off the neck. Folding deeper at the mid-ribs. Again, the higher the chest is lifted, the deeper that fold, the less strain on the neck. One more each side. Draw knees to chest, shoulders and head to mat, and we'll stretch. Gliding those shoulders down. Bending the knees, placing the feet flat to the mat, just in line with your sit bones. We'll reset that neutral spine position. Arms are going to come right up over the chest. We're going to bring our right leg to tabletop. Holding here, drawing the ribs and the shoulders together towards the spine. We inhale to straighten that right leg forward, and exhale to draw it back. On our next one, both arms are going to glide overhead as the right leg straightens forward. We inhale to reach and lengthen, drawing the abdominals in deeper towards the back, and exhale back to our start position. Last two. Right foot resets to the mat. Left leg comes to tabletop. Find your alignment, find that even weight from hip to hip, and we inhale, lengthen that left leg forward. And exhale, come back. You can always add any props to the hands, like some lightweight dumbbells, or if you have a Pilates ring with those active motion bars, to add a little weight to the upper body. On our next one, we're going to add our arms. Tightening up, reset for just a moment so you're connecting in deeper to the abdominals, and we inhale to lengthen and reach. Last two. Lowering that left foot, soles of the feet are together, knees angle out for that butterfly stretch, and arms reach out for the side. Bring the knees back to parallel. Arms are going to come at the chest. We're going to tilt the hips back, imprint the low back. We're going to do a few more of those stretches through the arms, shoulder, and chest. Once our low back's in flexion, we're out to that T position with the arms, and arms are gliding up towards that Y and back to the T. Return to T. Arms are back up at the chest, palms rotate to face the knees, and our low back returns to its neutral position, little gap between the mat and the back. Legs to tabletop, we're taking our double leg extension and adding our chest lift. On our exhale, arms lower, chest lifts, legs extend forward. And exhale to reset back to the mat. Finding that deep fold, building that tension in the core. And we'll move the arms overhead slightly. Ribs and abdominals knit in. And exhale, fold and lift and extend. Two more. Knees draw in towards the chest. Left leg lengthens down towards the mat, nice and long, holding on to that right knee. We'll bring our right knee out towards the shoulder, out to the side, ensuring that the hip and the back don't twist to the right. We maintain that even pressure. So you may need to back the knee away from the chest a little bit, find that weight from pocket to pocket, and then open out. And allow that leg to fall into your hand, fall towards the mat. And then take the leg cross-body just a little bit, being mindful of not twisting again the back or the hip. Taking that stretch from the inside of the thigh to the outside of the hip. And extend the right leg to the mat. Left leg draws in towards the chest to stretch, lengthening the right leg further. And again, we'll back off just a little bit. We'll find that weight from hip to hip. And then left leg will fall out to the side, into the hand towards the floor, without the back or the hips twisting. And then we'll take it cross-body, anchoring the hip, moving that stretch from the inside of the hip and leg to the outside. Left leg extends and straightens. We're going to work into our roll up. Hands are going to start over the chest. And on our exhale, we're going to fold and lift, head, neck, chest. Start to curl and roll. Reaching out nice and long over the legs, diving forward over the knees. And slow to curl back. Shoulders are sliding down, neck stays nice and long. We tilt back through the pelvis, imprinting the low back against the mat. Come just to the mid-ribs. And then on the next exhale, again, we curl and roll. Reaching out long over the legs, curling forward and stretching as we draw the abdominals deeper to the back to get that nice stretch to the back of the hips. Shoulders slide down to reset as the head and neck stretches long away from the tops of the shoulders, curling back just to the tip of the shoulder blade. And forward fold. Reaching and rolling out over the legs, stretching farther and longer. And now we're going to lift that right leg up off the mat as we curl and roll back. Just to the tip of the shoulder blade. And curl and roll. Right leg lowers as we stretch out over the legs. Stretching long towards the feet. We curl and we roll back and we float that left leg. Seating the shoulders down the ribs, down the back as we articulate to the mid-ribs. And fold and curl, lowering the left as we begin to stretch forward towards the feet. And curl. We'll do one more each side, floating each leg, one at a time as we curl back. Lowering the leg as we reset and roll and stretch forward. And last one with this left leg. Reaching and stretching, flex the feet. Try to reach for the toes. shift your weight just a little bit to stretch deeper through the hamstrings that connect in at the back of the hip. One more breath. And slow to reset, stacking up nice and tall and long. We're going to flip over face down. And we're going to work into a little bit of our basic back extension. If you're concerned about your low back, you could take a rolled up towel, very thin, nothing too thick, and you could put it right under your belly button, right at the top of the hips, and that will allow kind of the tailbone to sink towards the back of the knees and give you a little bit of length through the lumbar spine so there's not so much compression, give you a bit of space, and take that pressure off. Legs are pulled together, drawing pubic bone up and under to connect into those lower middle abdominals and knit the lower ribs in to pull those upper abs in. Arms are reaching long, and on our inhale, we're going to lift the chest up and exhale to lower, floating the face. This doesn't have to be a big movement. We're extending right across the mid-ribs, just at the broad line to lift the chest, so we keep it out of the low back. Actively engaging glutes and inner thighs. One more lift. Hands come in front. Forehead rests on the back of the hands. Glide those shoulders down. We'll separate the legs just a little bit, but still maintain that pelvic tilt, that tuck of the tailbone down towards the mat in the back of the knees. We're going to float the toes up off of the mat. Legs are nice and straight. And inhale, both legs lift, and slow to lower. We're keeping this extension in the hip, so there should be little to no pressure in the low back. Again, if you need to, you could set a small towel under the very top of the hip bones, just at your waistline, to keep the low back from overextending. Last three. Resting the feet down. Hands come by the side of the chest. We're going to peel and roll up. Sit back towards the heels. And as we come forward, we're going to bring our left foot forward enough for that thigh stretch, that lunge stretch through the front of the thigh, front of the hip. Nice and long through the spine. You can also do this standing or with a straighter back leg, so there's no pressure on that back knee. Reaching that left foot back. We'll sit back and stretch. And again, you could do this standing. So instead of being on your knees, you're standing. This is more of a downward dog position. And then we'll step forward with that right foot. Pressing the hips forward and down. Opening through the front of the hip. And bringing that leg back. And sitting back to the heels. Rounding through the back. Letting your tailbone sink towards the feet. Reaching farther and longer overhead with the hands and the arms. And then we come forward and we lower down to the mat. Back into some more back extension. Again, add that wedge under your waist, the top of the hips as needed. We're going to bring our arms out to a T position. Arms and nose are floating off of the mat. And on the inhale, engaging glutes, abdominals, we lift, head, neck, and chest. Reaching longer with the arms. And exhale to lower down. Inhale to lift. And exhale to lower. Reaching farther with the arms, with the legs, keeping that tension through the hips, through the abdominals, through the inner thigh. Squeezing shoulder blades back and down. Keeping the neck long. Last two. Forehead rests back to the back of the hands. Separating the legs once again. Reset, tuck that tailbone, decompress the low back. We're going to float the feet. We're going to alternate single leg extensions from the hip. We inhale to lift and exhale to lower. As you're lifting the leg, you're not tipping over to one side, keeping the abdominals tight and drawn up and in to protect the low back. One more each side. Lowering the feet, hands to the chest. Curl the toes under once again. We peel up. We sit back and stretch, tucking the tailbone, rounding and stretching the low back. And we curl and roll forward, walking that left foot forward and across. We're going to stretch through the hip. You don't have to lower the leg right away. We're going to find that stretch. Now you could do this standing with your left foot and leg up on a chair. Or return to your back and go into our figure 4 stretch. Shifting your body weight from right to left to move that stretch along the hip. Leg reaches back, we come back to the knees and we stretch back over the heels, tailbone to feet. And curling up, rounding the back for that nice stretch. Right foot comes forward and across for our pigeon stretch. Down to the mat. shifting your weight from side to side. And right leg comes back. We'll reach back overhead once again, stretching deeper. And we'll curl forward, coming back to the mat, lowering ourselves face down. We're going to interlace our fingers behind the back, pulling the chest open, lengthening the neck. Remember to tuck the tailbone, soften that low back, actively engage your abdominals. And on that inhale, we're going to lift the chest, draw the chest, the collarbone apart. And then exhale to lower. Place your left ear on the mat, look right. And then we rotate, bringing the head back to neutral. We inhale to lift. And then exhale, right ear to mat. Look out over the left shoulder. Unwind the head and the neck, and we inhale to lift. And switch back to that left side, left ear to mat. Coming back to center, we're going to add some hip extension with this upper back extension as well. Inhale, legs lift, chest lifts, and slow to lower. We'll keep the neck in neutral. You could add back those rotations if you'd like. Tight through the glutes and the abdominals, keeping it out of your low back. Nice deep belly inhale as you lift. One more. Hands to the chest, curl the toes under. We peel up. And we sit back. I'm going to go right hand, palm out in front, and I'm going to go palm to palm. So left hand is pressing the back of the right against the mat. And now I'm going to sit back for that nice deep stretch that goes up the side and back of that right arm, feeling it along the side of the body on the right side. It's a little bit of a rotation through the mid ribs. Try to keep the hips in neutral. And we'll reset. One neutral stretch with both hands flat as you reach back. And then we'll come forward. Back of the left hand on the mat. Palm to palm, right hand presses the left against the floor. Trying to press the hips back over the heels evenly. There's a little bit of a rotation through those mid ribs. And we'll come forward. Palms to the mat. Hands and wrists right underneath the shoulders. You could go to your forearm. We're going to step back with that right foot. Left leg comes to that straight plank position. And we hold here. Tailbone tucks, ribs and abs knit in. Breathing into that stretch. And then we tuck the tailbone, hips go high as we press the heels for the mat, for the floor. Getting that stretch through the back of the lower leg. And then we curl. Back out to that plank position. With ribs and abdominals knitted in nice and tight. Pushing up and away from the floor as we cinch the rib cage in. Pull through inner thighs. And then back into that downward dog stretch. Pressing the heels towards the floor. We'll add a little knee bend. Right knee will bend forward. Pressing that left heel down deeper. And slow to switch sides. Try to keep the shoulders away from the neck, away from the ears. And check the alignment of the foot. You should have a nice line of sight to the leg and the foot to ensure that the ankle isn't rolling in and out. And we'll curl and roll forward. Last plank. Last breath. Knees drop to the mat. And we sit back. Taking your right hand, your right arm, lace it under the left. Dropping that right shoulder towards the mat. And we sit back and down a little deeper for that rotational stretch. Unwinding, lining those hands up, and we'll sit back, left hand threads through under the right, and we sit back and stretch. Coming forward, unwinding. We'll come out to that quadruped, drop the hips for the mat, chest lifts up, chin lifts for the ceiling, and we'll curl and round back. One last round back stretch. And we'll slowly restack. Tailbone tucks, restacking the spine piece by piece, vertebra by vertebra, and reaching up nice and long overhead. All right, guys, great work today.